I'm not happy with CyberPowerPC, but it has nothing to do with this particular PC that I'm going to be reviewing. It has to do with their customer service, but I'll talk about that at the back end. For now, we're going to take a look at the Gamer Xtreme from CyberPowerPC, and this one comes with a 250KF with a RTX 5070, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 1 terabyte SSD. I'll be right back. With today's prices, picking up a good deal and letting you guys know about it might be useful. All right. All right. All right. So here it is out of the box. We're going to open this up here shortly and take out that internal packaging. But first, let's take a look at the peripherals. All right, so this thing came with, it looks like a full-size keyboard, and supposedly, according to the picture, it's white. It is white, but the keys, I don't know if the camera's gonna catch it. The keys aren't white. They're more like an off gray color, which, you know, I guess is fine, but the keys seem pretty responsive, so that's pretty good. It's not mechanical, but it is pretty responsive. We got a white mouse, wired, it looks like. It's got some, it's got like a medium weight to it. Not all that thrilled about the button work, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons on it. Feels okay. It looks like there's an RGB strip on the back side right there. It feels okay. Nothing special, but you know, a quick start guide. And to be clear, this is these quick start guides are pretty generic, and some of the diagrams are older, so it's still showing like DVI ports and things like that in there, and so it's not necessarily completely reflective of the PC that you get. I'm not sure how useful this kind of thing is to you guys. Let me know in the comments, but yeah. Okay, so it looks like we've got some gigabyte paperwork, so it looks like we've got some at least a gigabyte motherboard in there. Okay, so this 8-pin to 12-pin adapter for the GPU that probably came with the GPU. Wi-Fi antenna, a couple of SATA cables, one right angle, one straight, power cord, and an extra SSD securing screw, and some standoff pads for SSDs. All right, that's it. That's what comes with the accessories for this PC. All right, so it looks like it's got a little tape right here. I don't know if that's to secure this panel because it's going into the seam right here. So I'm not sure what that's for, but we'll take a look. On the back, you got the important arrow that points down to below the GPU where the GPU ports are, but you know, that's fine, I guess. And it says tempered glass right there. Oh, and this is a curved glass, which is not like the Gamer Xtreme that I've done before. So that's interesting. I didn't expect that. So that might be why this tape is here, to help secure it somehow. Let's see here. Oh, it swings. That is interesting. It swings open. I kind of like that. Most curved glass PC cases, they're like on rails and you have to slide them out, and sometimes they're a little wonky. But this one just swings open, and it looks like you just lift up. Yep. I kind of like that design. That's kind of cool. All right. And there's the packaging. And that's to protect the GPU for when shipping. All right. It looks like we've also got a gigabyte RTX 5070, and it's a single stick, 16 gig, rather than a 2x8, so that's a little disappointing. But anyways, so I'm gonna put the glass back on, and then we're gonna do the out-of-box experience. Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it is pretty loud, and I'm assuming it's because of the way the fans are set up in the BIOS. And it starts off in advanced mode, so let's switch over to easy mode, and that'll give us some info. So we got a B860M DS3H Wi-Fi 6E gigabyte motherboard. BIOS version is F9. All right, and so there's our 250KF plus CPU, and our 16 gigs of RAM is 5600 megahertz, and we'll take a look at that when we do the teardown. Set at Expo 1, which is odd because it's an Intel CPU. Expo is usually for AMD. Well, you know what? I'm gonna make adjustments. Just know that if you go into the BIOS, you get one of these PCs, and you have an Intel CPU, Expo 1's pretty much the same thing as XMP1 as far as the RAM settings go, but I prefer to use XMP mode for Intel based systems because then you're less likely to run into any kind of stability issues versus Expo 1 if you have an AMD CPU. So let's change that. And then let's go into the smart fans. Yeah, everything's set at full speed, it looks like. CPU is set at full speed. Everything is set at full speed, so, which is insane. And so let's change that to normal. And then we're going to change it to PWM. PWM. I don't even know if these are PWM fans, but we'll take a closer look at that when we do the teardown. All right, and we're going to keep these curves here, these fan curves here, the way it is preset, but you can go here and go to manual and then make adjustments if you wanted to. Okay, a lot quieter now, a little over 1350 RPMs, where it looks like hovering at around like 1365 to 1370 RPMs. So that's a lot better than over 2000, almost 2100 RPMs is what it was at full speed. And I don't know if you can hear the difference, but it is a whole lot better now. Resize bar is on. So other than that, we're not really going to change anything because the rest of the settings here are what the out-of-box experience is supposed to be. But I did change those things in here because I didn't want it to be unstable on the Expo side of things, which doubtful that it would happen, but it is a possibility. And I did change the fan speeds, and going at full speed all across the board was just insane. I don't know why they set it that way. So F10 to save and exit. Yes. Looks like we're in. I'm gonna reset the display settings so you guys can see what I'm looking at. All right, so it looks like the fan curves in the BIOS even set at normal. I don't know if you can hear it, but the fans are at like full speed right now. So it's pretty loud and obtrusive. And this right here looks like Gigabyte's control center. Microsoft Edge, NVIDIA app. It doesn't look like there's any other bloatware on here other than what comes with Microsoft Windows. All right, there's our 250KF plus CPU. 16 gigs of RAM at 5600 mega transfers. Looks like we got a Team Group 1 terabyte SSD, and we'll take a closer look at that when we tear open the PC. And the RTX 5070 from Gigabyte. Okay, doesn't look like we've got any conflicts. So that's it. That's the out-of-box experience. So I'm gonna go off screen, run some benchmarks. After that, I'll be right back, which is gonna be only a second or two for you of difference. And we'll go through the teardown, and then we'll talk about the benchmark results. All right, just like I said when I took the packaging out, this thing swings open which is an unusual design. And it's hinged right here, and it slides right up and out. All right, which is, I think, is a pretty good design. I like it. All right, and I think this top panel comes off. It looks like, considering that there's a couple of screws here. These are pretty tight, which, you know, kind of defeats the purpose of calling them thumb screws, but, you know. So it looks like it slides back and up and out. And it's a built-in filter. It's all metal. There's no filter screen in here. The porosity on it is okay. It's not great. It's actually a little, now that I take a closer look at it, it's a little on the small side, probably like a 30 to 40% porosity, which isn't all that conducive for airflow. But I didn't see anything concerning on the thermals, so I guess it'll work. All right, and then we got the back panel, or the side back panel, I guess. I don't know what to call it. The side panel in the back. Also, these thumb screws are a little bit on the tight side. I'm assuming it slides back. Yeah, it slides back and out. It is tabbed on the bottom here. And it slots in right here. A couple of holes. And more metal filtering for the fans that are right here, which I guess to a certain degree is okay, but I don't know. I'm not sure that I like that or not. But it looks like there was a magnetic filter on the bottom. So as you can see, we've got a 360 mil AIO at the top set to exhaust. We've got three 120 millimeter fans. These look like they're reverse blade fans because they're concave blades rather than convex, where it would fold over and towards the back. These kind of cave down or concave, right? And so these are reverse blade fans, which is kind of nice. And there's three 120 millimeter fans on the AIO and another 120 millimeter on the back as exhaust. No fans on the basement. And so let's take a look here. Go, there's the 12 6x2 cable. And again, they're over tightening these thumb screws. They don't need to be massively tightened. Just hand tightened is fine. Okay, and little screw protector thing, which I'm not really a fan of these. They feel more like obtrusive than anything else and get in the way. It's not going to secure anything, right? So there's the tabs in the back are already screwed down, so there's no real reason for it. I see it too often on these cases. And you got a little tab right here instead of your more upper end recent boards have like a push button style kind of release mechanism, but this one doesn't have it. It does have a lifted tab, and there's a couple of videos where I've used one of these. I think one was like a MSI board, and it just snapped right off. I didn't even put a lot of pressure on it. So be careful with that. All right, so this is the Gigabytes 5070. I'm not sure which model this is, but I'll figure it out, and I'll tell you right here. And what is that? See that? That looks like thermal paste. And it is. It's thermal paste. That was on the GPU. Great. All that quality control that CyberPower has, I guess. All right, and then here's the SSD. It's got a little heat sink that comes with the motherboard. Feels like it's aluminum. And this is a Team Group 1 terabyte drive, NV5000. And so I'll look that up and I'll show you the read-write speeds right here. And then we've got a single stick of DDR5 16 gig from ADATA, it looks like. Yeah, it's their XPG model. And it was in the A2 slot, which is usually your primary slot. And it is indeed a 5600 megatransfers. It is a CL45, which I don't recall ever seeing a CL45 before. Or is that 46? Kind of hard to... Okay, so looking at it closer, it's a CL46. Let me see if I can get this to focus. So that's a CL46, but the following 2 timings, there should be 3 timings that follow it, but for some reason ADATA I only ever see 2 after the CL number. But those 2 are 45, which is usually those 2 numbers are higher than the cast latency number. So that's quite unusual. I have no idea. All right, so let's check the security of these cables, make sure everything's in there snug. Cables are good. There's an odd choice for them to route this cable off to the side right here rather than down the back and up and over here, or through here and then over. I don't know why they chose to do it that way, but there's a few things already that aren't making a lot of sense to me, but you know, it is what it is. All right, so let's check the thermal paste. That's interesting. We might have a strip standoff here. I unscrewed the standoff rather than the screw. That's why you're hearing that clicking sound. We'll fix that later. But let's take a look. Thermal paste, looks like it was screen painted. It's a little on the thinner side, like there's a lot of pump out or something. So yeah, not impressed with that. And I'll be right back. I'm going to put that standoff back in. All right, so I got it back in. Whoever put this PC together is a little heavy-handed on screws. You just need snug. You don't need hyper tightened. Just snug. Otherwise, you're going to risk stripping stuff out and breaking stuff. And that's the last thing you want to do after spending thousands of dollars on a PC or PC parts. I'm not even pushing down here. I'm just turning the screw until it becomes snug. All right, and while we're at it, let's check all the screws. Okay, motherboard screws are fine. That screw is loose by about 3/4 of a turn. That screw is loose by about a half turn. That screw is loose by about a half turn. 3/4 turn loose. 3/4 turn loose. Half turn loose. Okay. Let's check these screws. Okay. Okay. All right. And then finally the back of these fans. Okay, that's fine. Cable management seems fine, but I did want to check to see if the fans were PWM or not. So this looks like it's a fan. They are PWM fans, so there's really no good reason why in the BIOS they had them set at full. All right. So cable management, like I said, is fine. It's got a little hub right there for, looks like RGB hub. And that might be why we're seeing the weirdness with the RGB, and I'll talk about that on the back end. Looks like there's a tray here. It's here for mounting HDDs and SSDs, like the 2.5-inch SSDs, in case you wanted to add on some extra storage that's not an NVMe. And while we're at it, while I'm thinking about it, this looks like another M.2 NVMe slot right here. And I think that's it for extra storage. All right. All right, so not a lot else to talk about here. Let's take out the power supply and see what we got. Okay, so it's a non-modular power supply. It's a high power supply, 850 watts, 80 plus gold. It looks like our 12-volt rail is 850 watts, so pretty efficient power supply. It's unfortunate that it's a non-modular one, but for pre-built, it's understandable to save on costs. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's what we've got here, and I'll be back with benchmark results and where I bought this and what price I paid, and my thoughts on the PC itself, and also to talk a little bit about how disappointed I am in CyberPowerPC's customer service. All right, so let's get to the benchmarks. The fans might get loud because it has a tendency to spin up unexpectedly to like near full speed, even when I set it at silent mode. So if that happens, then I might turn off the PC so that the sound doesn't get in the way. It is on the loud side. Let's start with Cyberpunk 2077 ultra settings, no RT, no frame gen, and no scaling. At 4K, we got to 49.4 average FPS with 1% lows at 39.4. At 1440p, we did 108.3 average FPS with 1% lows at 79.7. At 1080p, we did 145.2 average FPS with 1% lows at 88.9. The top CPU temperature for that run came in at 63C with the top power draw of 133.1 watts. The top GPU temperature came in at 65.3C with the top VRAM temperature of 66C and the top power draw of 242.9. Then we did Black Myth Wukong at cinematic settings and minimized scaling because you can't turn it off in that game. And at 4K, we did 67.4 average FPS with 1% lows at 55.8. At 1440p, we did 80.6 average FPS with 1% lows at 66. And at 1080p, we did 88.5 average FPS with 1% lows at 72.5. Top CPU temperature for that run came in at 66C with the top power draw of 133.7 watts. The top GPU temperature for that run came in at 63.3C with VRAM temperature at 66C and the top power draw at 207.5 watts. Then we did Marvel Rivals at ultra settings, no frame gen, no RT, and no scaling. And at 4K, we did 41 average FPS with 1% lows at 25.5. At 1440p, we did 69.3 average FPS with 1% lows at 37.2. And at 1080p, we did 94.1 average FPS with 1% lows at 50.5. And there's those fans starting to spin up. So much better. Wow, that's annoying. So, yeah. Anyways, going back to Marvel Rivals, the CPU temperature topped out at 67C with top power draw of 158.8 watts. Top GPU temperature came in at 64.5C with top VRAM temperature at 70C and the top power draw of 216.2 watts. Then I ran PC Mark 10, which is an overall PC performance on both productivity and creativity side, and that did pretty well. It's higher than I had anticipated, with an overall score of 11,541, which allowed it to rank within the top 1% of all PCs in that test. Top CPU temperature came in at 73C with top power draw of 169.6 watts. Top GPU temperature came in at 57.8C with top VRAM temperature of 58C and the top power draw of 153.7 watts. Let's talk about some of the things that I observed. So for instance, when we went into BIOS, the BIOS version was F9, which came out in February of this year. The latest BIOS version is the F10 BIOS, and that came out in June of this year. So we've got a 4-month spread there. That's, I guess, acceptable, but at the same time, that means that this PC has been sitting on the shelf possibly since February of this year. We are now in July, which is when I bought the PC. So it's a little unfortunate. The other unfortunate thing is, and this might have to do with the fans or the fan hub that's in there or the motherboard or a combination of those three, but these fans will not spin down on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, you can put it on normal mode or silent mode in the BIOS or even in the motherboard software, the Gigabyte Control Center, and put it on silent mode in there, and it'll still spin up to full blast when it's even sitting at idle and for an unknown indefinite amount of time. Something's going on with the fans in here, whether it's the fans themselves or the hub or the motherboard or the combination of the three. It's an unacceptable level of performance where you cannot adjust. That's really unacceptable. Whatever the cause is, I'm leaning more towards the fans themselves and the hub than the motherboard, because I don't see why the motherboard would have an issue with it. It's like every other motherboard as far as controlling fans. And while on that subject, when we first got in the BIOS, as you recall, all the fans and the pump for the AIO were set at full speed, which you don't need them set at full speed. I don't know why they set them at full speed. They were set on full speed auto mode rather than normal speed PWM mode, which is really all you need. And sometimes, I'm sure there's a decent number of you that would set it at silent mode or something. But considering how loud these fans are, and considering that it doesn't look like anybody even went into the BIOS at all to do what needs to be done in preparation for selling a PC. I mean, everything so far with this PC that I've run into that I didn't like were things that were easily avoidable, but it's as if CyberPowerPC didn't really care. And I'm going to circle back to that here in a little while. Also, in the BIOS, the RAM was set to Expo, which is for AMD chipsets, versus XMP, which is Intel chipsets. Now, to be fair, those settings are usually the same as far as the RAM timings go. And I don't know if you noticed earlier, the RGB transitions were pretty choppy on this, and that might have something to do with the RGB hub, or it might have to do with the fans themselves, but it was also doing the same thing on the RGB for the case. I didn't notice whether or not it was actually doing the same thing with the RAM, but the transitions were really, really choppy as opposed to very smooth, which is the case in most PCs. So I don't know what they did with this to make it that way. I highly doubt it has anything to do with the motherboard. They could, but I'm thinking maybe it's that RGB hub. The glue on the arrow sticker that points down to the GPU when you first get it, it lays over the IO cover of the motherboard. And so when you take that off, it leaves a strong residue. I guess it's fine. I mean, if you use like something like isopropyl alcohol to get it off, but it could smear depending on how strong that glue is, and make it look even worse. It could come off, and if it does, that's great. I would highly recommend against applying heat or anything, or spraying it with anything other than isopropyl alcohol, because anything else could potentially get droplets of whatever you're using into the IO ports and do some damage. So I would highly recommend against that. They need to lighten up on that glue. There's no need for the glue to be that strong. There's also some loose screws in the fans on the AIO. Several of them, in fact, were at least half to 3/4 turns loose, which can be concerning. I mean, that could cause vibrational noise. They could, over time, from that vibration, start to unscrew themselves and they'll just drop out. So, snug, right? Snug. Which brings me to all the other screws that I dealt with when it comes to like the thumb screws and things like that, and the screws on the pump for the AIO. Those are like hyper tightened, which they don't need to be, just snug. And because of that, the top left standoff for the CPU cooler came out from behind the motherboard, because the screw that goes into the standoff, that screws into the standoff, was so tightened that when I started turning that, it didn't loosen that screw. It started turning and loosening the standoff. This is the kind of thing that happens when you over tighten. You don't need to do that. I did like this aesthetic right here. I like the curved glass look. I just don't like a lot of the curved glass, specifically if they're single piece, how burdensome it can be to remove from a PC case, to the point where you could possibly mishandle something like that and then drop it and break it. And so I'm not a big fan of those. But I did like how they did this on a hinge point, and it comes up and out. There's no mounting fans at the bottom. There's no bottom intake fans. There's no place where you can mount fans. So I don't like that. I wanted to be able to mount fans at the bottom to increase the cooling and maybe decrease the noise level of these fans. If that could be done, or if that were the problem. It's not a bad PC. The performance on it was pretty decent. The thermals on it weren't concerning. But then again, the fans are really, really loud. It's distracting how loud the fans are. This is probably the loudest I've had a PC review on of all the pre-builds I've done so far. I paid $13.50 for this PC, and I got it from Walmart. And considering current prices, I believe I priced out doing this PC at current prices, I think we're at like over 1,800. And then just to confirm whether or not this was a good deal, I did revisit the GPU, the SSD, and the RAM prices, and I went back to, I think it was like September or October or something like that of last year, right before all the prices started increasing. And I repriced everything, and that still came in at about like 30 or 40 bucks over what I paid for this. And on top of that, you get a 1-year parts and labor warranty with the PC from CyberPowerPC. So at $13.50, it's not a bad deal. It's actually a pretty decent deal. It's comparative to the pricing that you would have gotten before all the price fixing started happening with the memory and the SSDs and the GPUs. I did not misspeak. It is price fixing. I have no doubt in my mind that they price fixed all of this stuff. Would have been nicer had it been closer about like 1,300 or maybe even a little bit below. Yeah, I would have definitely recommended it at that price point. But at $13.50, it is a good price point. I probably wouldn't pay more than $1,400 for it because I refuse to buy into all the price fixing that's been going on. I refuse to buy any component that is hyper overvalued right now. And so that's why it's taken quite some time since my last pre-built review to find a PC where the price was fine. That being said, I did find another PC, and that had a 9070 XT in it, and I think it was a 9900X CPU and 32 gigs of RAM. I think it was a 2 terabyte SSD, if I recall correctly. I might be misremembering that part. But I was going to buy that from CyberPowerPC's website. I want to say it was for like 1,600 and change or 1,500 and change. And so I ordered it online through their website. And then they sent me an email saying that I needed to call their sales guy to confirm the purchase. And apparently, if you buy it with a credit card with one address and you want it shipped to a different address, they have an issue with that. They think it could be a potential fraud thing. And I'm going to circle back to that. And so they make you call them to talk to them. I'm assuming to verify that it's an actual human being and not like a bot buyer or something. But then after confirmation, they say, yeah, you can't do that. I'm going to send you an email with a list of stuff of alternative ways that you can buy it. And the list included changing the shipping address to the billing address. Here's the thing. If I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on a PC, I don't want it sitting on my porch for somebody to take. And I don't want to have to be forced to take a day off because I don't know what time the delivery is going to be. And honestly, I don't even know if it's going to be the day that they say it's going to be, especially if it's someone like FedEx. So then I'm kind of stuck. And this is what I'm telling the guy when he tells me, well, I can't help you. All right. There's nothing you can do, huh? There's no way for you to just tick authorized. Then he tells me that there's other ways you can do it, which, was in that list. And I tell you what, I got so frustrated with the guy and his lack of care. I mean, he was so apathetic. You could hear it in his voice that he didn't care one way or the other whether I got the PC or not. He didn't care one way or the other whether I bought it, which is reflective of the company. And so I asked him if I could speak with his supervisor. And he's like, no, I'm the highest level that you are allowed to talk to. And so there's no other sales manager, which is his claim that that's what he is. And this is what I'm asking him. So there's no other sales manager. No, I'm the only one. So if those things are true, the apathy, the bottleneck of him being the only one, And the lack of customer support and care where it can be escalated, well, that doesn't exist, according to this guy. And so all of these things happen where I decided, you know what? Fuck them. I don't want to buy it now. So I canceled the order. And then shortly after that, I happened to run across this deal, and it happened to be a CyberPowerPC. But I tell you what, after my experience with them, for sure, 1000%, I am not gonna ever order a PC directly from CyberPowerPC again. And I don't know if I'll ever buy one other PCs to review, because what's the point? Why would I recommend a PC from a PC company that apparently doesn't care about its customers? Or at least that's how this guy came across. Every other PC that I've purchased online, which is almost every single pre-built PC I've reviewed so far, none of them had an issue with delivering it to a different address than my billing address. Skytech wanted confirmation that that's what I wanted when I bought from them. And that's the only other time that came up, right? Every other time, including this PC that I bought from Walmart online, none of them had a problem with the fact that I wanted it delivered to my work address. Not once. So, yeah, CyberPowerPC, if you want to stand behind that policy and all that stuff, you go ahead and stand behind that policy, but everybody else is fine with it. So, I don't accept your excuse that it's to avoid fraud. I think you're creating a extra barrier for purchase that doesn't need to exist. It's unfair to the consumer that wants control of how they purchase something. So, fuck you. All that being said, it's not a bad PC. It's not a bad price. There's a decent enough stuff going on as far as the build quality goes and the aesthetics and all that stuff goes that I would be concerned. I'd rather see it at a $1,200 price for the extra inconvenience of the stuff that I observed. But other than that, at $1,350, it's a decent price. Sorry if I went on a bit of a ramble there and a rant, but it was really upsetting what I went through with CyberPowerPC. I know, for first world problems, right? But at the same time, you shouldn't have to deal with that. We've got enough to deal with price problems. We shouldn't have to deal with issues with customer service. All that said, hope you found the information helpful, and hope you enjoyed the video. If you got any questions or comments or anything, feel free to write them down in the comments. I'm more than happy to get back to you. And in the meantime, thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next one.